everybody. I am here today for The Lawyer's Daughter with Todd Lindsey, who may or may not believe it, but burnt a hole in my memory when working on Unmasking a Killer, which was about, I think we recorded maybe 2 years before. Was it in 2016, Todd, that we got started, that you were working, we were filming, or was it 2017?
I think it was 2017.
2017. It wasn't too far before D'Angelo was caught. And
no, the show, the last episode of the 5-part series aired 2 weeks before the arrest.
Yeah, there you go. Talk about
the timing was
timing. Like you can't make that up. Right?
Yeah, I couldn't have paid to have that happen any better. I mean, you just can't. It can't happen that way unless it's completely by chance, which it was obviously. You know.
And I remember so favorably coming down, and I do want you to tell me about yourself, but I just wanted to have everybody understand why it's so important to me to talk with you. Is that I remember we came down to North Hollywood. I think we were doing it right by Universal Studios. The offices there, Joke's offices.
Yes.
And I brought my daughter. Studio City. That's right. I brought my daughter and a friend. And what blew me away is when you showed me what I call your war room. I've referred to it as your war room, but for me, you had visualized data, which is so powerful. I mean, here I am, a marketing person, and the power of visualizing data. And then everything we did that day was so respectful and thoughtful. And for me, it was the first time I turned a corner and decided I wasn't going to be afraid anymore when I did an interview, and that I actually challenged for the first time. I said, like, bring it, just bring it. We got you, sucker. And it turns out it was, so true. So tell us about yourself, and then I want to know.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. After you were done, and after you and your daughter left, and you guys were great, by the way. We loved having you there. It was fantastic. Joke said, I told Joke. I said, she did a great interview. And she said, really? Because she seems very feisty, and she's a fighter. And I said, yeah. And I said, it all came out in the interview. That's going to be a fantastic interview. And it was. As soon as we got in the editing room, we were like, oh my God, Jen's great. We could use Jen through the whole thing if we wanted to. But yes, you were forceful in your opinions, and they were well thought out, and you got a little emotional. I mean, you kind of ran the whole gamut. But you were very honest, which we loved. And you talked about the case in its entirety. You didn't, smooth over anything. I thought that was fantastic of you, because things got pretty crazy right after, your father's murder. Oh yeah. I don't have to tell you, for the audience.
Oh no, things got
and so
hella crazy. And the thing is that, yeah, I think that for me, being authentic and telling the truth is the only thing that I think helps other people out there who listen and tell me they identify. I'm like, yeah, let's be truthful.
I think people can sense that right away when you're being honest in an interview and bearing your soul. I think so. I think I can tell right away. So.
Well, okay, so you do. So you woke up one day and said, I need to do this killer thing. Like, how did it even get started?
So I was working for the E! Channel and doing writing and research for True Hollywood Story and E! Investigates. So True Hollywood Story obviously is the celebrity component, and E! Investigates was true crime. And they were actually very, they were kind of right on that cusp of, that true crime explosion that happened in TV, several years back, where we had all of a sudden we have all these channels that do it. People weren't really doing it then, and he was kind of on the cusp of that. So I got to give him respect for that. And they were very open to any stories I brought them. I brought them some stories that were pretty crazy, and I was like, this is a great story. But I was just researching one night. I was home alone. I think it was about 11:30, and I stumbled upon the original Night Stalker website, with the picture of the guy in the face mask.
That thing used to upset me so much. Just the image was upsetting, because it's very jarring when you go there. And I'm like, could you guys not make this your landing page? I can't do it. I can't come back. It was the stocking cap and just the eyes, and it was blue eyes, right? They had made them brilliantly blue, so you just so you ended up there.
And the clenched teeth.
Oh yeah.
Which was another big thing. They said he would always speak through clenched teeth, And I thought that was, you know, and so he included that into the drawing that he made, and I thought that it was pretty good. So I started reading the website and became fascinated with it. The question I kept asking myself over and over was how come I haven't heard of this? I've researched all these cases and I've never heard of this. And then I realized I've heard of a few of the cases, the Orange County cases, when they had a DNA match. I remember reading that in the paper, but I didn't put it together as being part of the original Night Stalker. I don't know if they even used that term in the article I read, and I didn't realize how widespread, obviously. So after reading the info on this article or on this website, I obviously was really intrigued and fascinated. It's a one-of-a-kind case, as you know. I really haven't seen any other offenders that really kind of relate to this guy and his MO and how he acted. He seemed to be very unique. The thing that really clinched it was, so I clicked on the little spot that said to hear the killer's voice. And I had my speakers up because I was probably listening to music earlier and I forgot. So when the breathing starts, it was super loud and it scared I jumped. I got a jump scare. And I'm home alone and I'm thinking, you know, does he know I'm listening to this? You know, you think illogical thoughts. And I was like, wow, I mean, it really kind of took the wind out of me for a second. But that's what started the whole ball rolling. So I started researching it and calling people who were involved in the case. And one of the first guys I called was Larry Crompton, retired from the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. And he's been fantastic. And he was then, and he said, Todd, the press never talks about this case. It's the one case I really want to solve before I pass away. And you know, when a guy like Larry Crompton tells you that, I get choked up a little bit thinking about it now. And you're like, I want to help this guy, whatever, you know, in any way I can, you know, publicize the case and do whatever I can.
And that was just one investigator. Right. We know there were dozens. At least I know there were people in Ventura who kept pushing it. There's Larry Poole down in Orange County. There were so many people. And once you realize how many people had this, as much as it's been my whole life, it's been their whole life too.
Yes, you're exactly right. Larry Poole has devoted his entire career to this case. He never forgot it, never let it go, always worked on it. And really, people understand he eliminated a lot of top suspects, which was very important. And of course, Paul Holes, I mean, he's the man who decided to use genealogy to figure this case out, and we will always be grateful to him for that. It was a touch of genius. It was exactly what we needed. And look at the effect it's had on law enforcement now on cold case investigation. And it's a new world. They're arresting cold case suspects once a week now, cases that are 20, 30, 40 years old. I even saw one that was 50 years old. That's amazing. I mean, just the effect that this investigation has had on other cases really makes me proud, because it's really solved a ton of cases then, and will continue to do so far into the future. I mean, I'm being told that we may know who the Zodiac Killer was and Jack the Ripper was, because there are some products to get DNA from both those cases. Oh, so good. If you have the DNA, it's just a matter of going through the genealogy.
Yeah,
eventually you'll figure it out.
Yeah, just get it typed, so we know the what is that called, ATC code or whatever. We know what the code is, and then we can go batch it to anybody forever. Like, we'll have it. Right. Which is weird. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole of DNA because it's so fascinating, and the privacy issues and everything. But when
it is.
When so you're making Unmasking Killer, you've written it, and I don't even know how it goes when you write.
Well, first we did a 1 hour show. It's funny. First, I wanted to do 15 minutes on it in an e-show about 3 different unsolved serial killings. Okay. And once I got into it, I worked with Suzanne Ross and Michael Hacker, 2 producers, supervising producers at E, and they both said you got way too much for a 15-minute segment. Well, we can't even tell this story in 50 minutes, and they were completely right. So we put it on the shelf, and usually when you shelf something, that means death. You'll never see it again. And we did this show on 3 other serial killers. I think it was called Serial Killers Among Us. Anyway, I was shocked. Like 4 months later, we get a message from the network saying, take it off the shelf and we'll give you a whole hour on it. I was like, that's all I did for months. Was this call people, and of course I had way too much for when you take the commercials out, it's 42 minutes. So I had way too much for 42 minutes. But we were able to tell the story from Sacramento to the last murder in Orange County, but we couldn't get into Visalia at all.
Right.
No time. And I really, even back then, wanted to do it.
That's amazing, because at some points I look at Visalia and God love them, but I'm like, I'm exhausted already. Like, God, there's so much.
I felt from the very beginning you cannot tell the story without including the Visalia ransacker cases, because I was convinced even then it was connected. It was the same guy, and turned out it was. I wasn't the only one who thought that. A lot of people thought that. Yeah. So we did 42 minutes, and I watched it again before we started the new documentary, and I was like, it's pretty good. It's compact. I would love to have got a lot more information in, but it tells the story, the basic story. And that had never been told before. MSNBC Investigates had done just the Southern California murders. They hadn't done the Sacramento crimes. So that was the first show to do both. So then, of course, I want to do the documentary where I can talk about Visalia and Sacramento and Southern California as much as I want, And so I wrote up a treatment years later after the E! Show.
Wow.
And I pitched it to several companies. Nobody wanted to do it because they said it doesn't have an ending. And I would say,
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't have an ending. Like,
because he wasn't caught. Right.
Yeah.
And I would point out, well, there's been a million things done on Black Dahlia and the Zodiac Killer. One of the best movies I've ever seen was on the Zodiac Killer. It's a great film. And I said, no ending. They have a suspect, but there's no ending to either of those. I mean, and in Black Dahlia, they've done countless stuff on her, and there really is no main suspect. I know people say there is, but really there's not. So there's been lots of shows like that where it's unsolved. So I worked with Joke Productions on several shows. I really liked Joke and Biagio, the husband and wife team that own Joke Productions.
And you're saying O-K-E for anybody who doesn't. It's literally the word joke, which is important because I remember I'm going to a place called Joke Productions. Am I serious?
Right. She's Flemish. She was born in Belgium, and so it's a Flemish name.
But I don't think she thought, to it. I gotta say, she steps into the name, which is.
And I don't know if they necessarily thought they were going to go into true crime production when they started, or they might have gone with a different name. But everybody knows us now because they've been doing so much work in that field for many, many years, and great, high quality stuff. So it doesn't matter anymore. Everybody knows in that field who Joke Productions are, and they're well respected. But anyway, so I pitched it to them while I was working on another show for them, and Joke put it aside, for 2-3 months. She was very busy. And another producer, Amanda at Joke Productions, had read it and told her, you got to read that. That's a hell of a story. And I've never heard of it. And so Joke read it and immediately called me and said, please come in and discuss this. And we talked about it for about 3 hours. You have to stop me. I won't shut up about it. You have to cut me off and go, okay, we've heard enough. My girlfriend has done that many times. And she was really enthusiastic. So we went around and pitched it to Netflix and Amazon and just all the people in Hollywood. And Netflix and CNN were the two that CNN wanted it for HLN. They own HLN. So they wanted it for that. HLN wanted to do more crime type documentaries and just more documentary programming, I think, in general. So that fit right in there. And Netflix really liked it. They wanted to wait a little bit. And we knew time was of the essence, especially when they reopened the case right in the middle of us trying to convince, you know, a network to take the show.
Yeah, the FBI profile came out, right? And it was
Yes.
heat up. Like things were, at least media wise. I know Larry Poole had been trying forever to get the FBI.
Oh, years had been trying. Larry Poole at Orange County had been trying for years to get the FBI to help, and he says they did provide some profiling, that kind of thing.
But it's not like Criminal Minds. They don't go, we got a case, and show up. No, it takes, to get their attention takes a ton of work.
It does.
I understood from Larry, like that was hard.
And in their defense, I mean, they're supposed to step in if there's like an interstate type of crime, and there was no evidence of that. Now they can. There are certain circumstances where they can overlook that and step in, but yeah, I think, you know, they have rules that they go by, and you know, I got to tell you, when Larry was asking them to step in, there were unsolved serial killings all over the country. You know, hundreds of them. Left over from the 60s and 70s, a lot of them, but a lot of current ones from the 80s and 90s too. So I know the FBI was working a lot on the Green River case in the 90s and stuff. So, I mean, they will look at it, I think, if it, for whatever fits their, it comes within their field of vision and they feel like it fits what they can do, you know, for local law enforcement.
So that got CNN's attention when they, I mean, Netflix,
oh God, it got everybody's attention. It was
Netflix
major
is
news.
like counting their toes, and so CNN says, we'll make our move and let's buy this thing.
And they did it, and we hit the road. I broke all records for the most interviews that a joke production program has ever done by far. I mean, it wasn't even close. I think we had 55 interviews.
Oh my gosh.
For 5 one-hour episodes. So that's a lot. That's quite a bit. But you understand why. There's so many parts of this story. I mean, this guy made this his career for 12 years and was very active.
Incredibly active. I mean, yeah, first of all, there's so much content. I'm with you. I think just knowing what all the survivors here have done as we've prepared for other shows, there's so many interviews. Just our stupid Ventura story alone, if you just wanted to dig into the intrigue and salaciousness and nonsense, there's so much. So yeah, you add all these, stack up all these lives, and how many homes he's been in, and people in California, how many people who still claim that he has touched them and they're not even considered official. And I believe those people. I believe he never stopped. I mean, he didn't eventually stop, but I mean, he didn't, during that period, he was compelled. Like
I agree. Like it absolutely compelled to do what he did, even if it's just the stalking behavior. That was his hobby. That was his passion. Right. You don't spend that much time. I mean, the detectives I've spoken to, and you have too, I'm sure, Paul Holst, he says, I don't know when this guy slept. Because he would work all day and then he'd be prowling all night. All night, yeah. Several times a week, many times a week, 4 or 5 nights a week sometimes. He's obviously somebody who maybe has a very high metabolism and doesn't have to sleep very much. I mean, I'm not sure. You know, some people are like that. They just have this energy. Yeah, and it was all focused on that one thing, which is really the stalking, the peeping, the going through people's stuff, the need to just get into people's homes. I mean, he did damage too, and he killed people, but there was, the compulsion is what I can't get over. And it's just as strong as when he stands in court and it's that same, I always feel it's the same compulsive behavior that allows him to be almost not there in the court. Right, to compartmentalize different aspects of his personality. I agree, he glasses over. Yeah. And so that's just, I'm removing myself from this situation because it's not comfortable. He doesn't care how, absolutely insane he looked when he does that, I guess. But you guys get the green light and you do all these interviews. What is your impression as you're doing these interviews? Because you're, like, I'm behind the camera, but you're behind the camera, whatever. I'm in front of the camera, but right. I'm not able to know the whole 360. You're taking it all in. You're listening to everybody. What are you starting to think about? Because I loved how you visualize the data. I mean, just to see the pattern, when you talk about prolific, when you had the calendar up and had all the dates and everything, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen it like this. This is so powerful. And you really need, because so many cases, you really need to see it visually to really understand the pattern. There's just
Frequency,
so
which we're
much.
just talking about, the frequency that he didn't sleep. There would maybe be 3 days where there was no activity, and I'm like, well, maybe it was raining. Like, that's so weird. As we were talking
Right.
about geographies and stuff, it's
But
just
we wouldn't even be sure of that, because
right.
just because he hasn't been spotted in 3 days doesn't mean he hasn't been out. He easily could have been out.
Exactly. Oh,
And you go,
yes.
oh, this is weird. 4 weeks between these two attacks, but they're the same neighborhood, and then 3 weeks between these two attacks. Well, it's not weird. He's prowling, and he has several victims in mind. We know for a fact that he attacked one house and was thwarted. I think he made noise, and the husband woke up and came out, so he had to leave before I think he even got in the house, or right after stepping in the house. Anyway, he went to another house on his list and had a successful attack there, because he's in that frame of mind, so he's not going to be denied. And so he has backups, which is, I've never heard of that before, and it's absolutely insane. But either he kept them on a written list, we've never found those, or he kept them in his head. But clearly he's hitting several houses a night to take either mental notes or written notes on who's home, what time to go to bed, and so he has all these victims in his head waiting for the right night. Just the absolute number of cases is staggering. So you really need to see it visually. We put it on a map so we could see it as it spreads out and spreads through the state.
You had geography,
and that gives you like an
dates.
idea.
Yeah, and your point, and I think your point's so valid, because I'm sheltering in Sacramento right now, and the more time I spend here and talk to Sacramentans, which I'm not particularly doing, I do it online, but there are so many people are convinced that they had an experience with him, and I don't think they're wrong. Your exact point, just because there didn't culminate with a rape, or maybe it did, some cases there are some rapes that the police didn't react to the same way, because we all know the police work back then, well, good. It wasn't perfect. And also you had to tie crimes together through MO, not necessarily through DNA. We didn't have all the tools we have today.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me at all that there are probably so many more.
I agree. And yes, these cases impacted thousands, if not tens of thousands of people directly. I mean, it's like throwing a rock into a pond, the ripples go out everywhere. So when a victim is raped or murdered, or in many cases both, the family and friends surrounding them, they're all victims now, and they will never forget that. They will never have that leave. And then not to have the perpetrator brought to justice is just a slap in the face, on top of this huge pain that you've been given, that your loved one, obviously, I don't have to tell you this because you went through this exact same thing. And it's, they say closure. It's not really closure, but I understand what they're saying when they say that. It's at least justice if you get if somebody's arrested and convicted for the crime.
Yeah, if you get a conviction right now, we're hoping the coronavirus.
But I mean, even back then when this happened, so when you don't have that, you've lost a loved one to a horrifically violent crime, and you have no idea who did it, and no prospects of justice. I mean, that to me, I guess, is what really drives me, is they never got justice. None of these people, not the victims, not the victims' families and friends, never got any justice. And this guy's retired somewhere. They would say, we know he's not in prison now, because they really searched the prisons for quite a while.
Larry Poole telling me that.
Larry Poole was big on that.
That was his big thing. Dead, in locked up, or handicapped. That was his three, which kind of became my mantra for sanity. Like, oh, he's dead, he's incarcerated, or he's in some way.
And it's great, because that's a norm thing. But now we know that there may be other reasons why a serial killer will stop. It seems like maybe home pressures with the kids, maybe even activated the last murder, because it just seems like the last couple of murders really are timed very close to the birth of his children. So it just seems like it's relevant in some way.
And he was really decompensating by that. I mean, those murders, once the murders,
they were gruesome. The anger in those was some of the worst that we had seen throughout the series.
Ever. Yeah. I mean, he just starts to lose it, which also we know physically I mean, part of it seemed to be what motivated him was his physicality, that he got off on being like this MacGyver guy who could jump over walls and turn something off and kill the dog and all this kind of stuff. And of course, that does leave you as you age.
Yes.
So it might have also been rage at himself that he didn't quite have that agility and dexterity and.
Right.
I don't know.
And you remember, well, he lost control of the second to last murder of the couple in Goleta. They put up a huge fight. So I think, and they always thought that he might have been injured in that fight. Now there's a big gap between that crime. There's a 5-year gap between that crime and the last crime in Orange County of the 18-year-old girl. Yes, I agree with you. I think that scared him. I think as he was getting older, he realized, I can't do this anymore. I can't jump walls. If the cops are chasing me again, I'm not going to be able to outrun them like I was doing in Sacramento when I was younger. So, and Visalia. And he's not a cop at this time anymore. So he's not being trained. He's not keeping in shape like he was when he was forced to.
And then I think you're talking about Janelle. He picks Janelle, who's young
and 18 and home alone, and he knows it because he was there the night before. They heard the noises. She had friends over the night before, so he doesn't attack then. But he definitely was watching her, knew that she was home alone, probably heard her say, my parents are in Mexico. She has a park behind her house. You can watch through the sliding glass door. I mean, it's a perfect, as we know, he looks for certain things. And unfortunately, where Janelle lived, she had all those things.
So as you talk to all of us, you did the interviews.
Here, you want to hang on a second? Let the garbage truck go by. I'm in my front room.
I'm looking at the time. Okay, 11:39. Hang on one second. I'll mark that. Okay. 11:39. I'll remember. That's not that hard of a time.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Guys,
repeat that last sentence.
Okay, so as you wrapping up what was going on with the show, you're wrapping up the interviews, and you look at this aggregate, and what did you think about that? Especially you're getting ready to produce it. I know you're wanting to catch the guy. I mean, I think all of the folks that are still doing things that we would call entertainment, because this odd intersection between entertainment and true crime, which is, I don't know if it's an unholy alliance. It's certainly been a profitable alliance, but you're doing something that's entertainment at the same time. I feel like you really held the responsibility of our vulnerability and our willingness to cooperate, because by the way, none of us get paid, people. We don't get paid.
Right.
So we do this because we share a common goal, which is, Todd's is a little bit about entertainment, of course, because he's got to make money for the network. But at the same time, we share the other common goal of catching a killer, of trying to informing
people. I was always had the fantasy that we would, either you or somebody we interviewed, or the police departments and all the various jurisdictions would release something that would jog somebody's memory.
Yes, right.
I know who that was doing that burglary. So if I know who that was doing that burglary, I know who the Golden State Killer is, because we know that was the Golden State Killer. That's what I was hoping for. There were several times that he had been seen coming or going out of neighborhoods during burglaries. And I was and even one time getting into a car driven by a woman. That was one of the reports. So I was very hopeful that there was a woman out there who maybe hates him now, who would speak up. That's happened a million times in the past with she was scared of her husband when the crime was committed. They're divorced for 10 years now. She's not scared of him anymore. She goes to the cops. They break open a 25-year-old case. It happens quite a bit. So I was kind of hoping that maybe we could get that kind of tip.
And by the way, we haven't gotten, that I know of, we still haven't gotten any of those people that knew him and said, oh yeah, now this man. No, we got, he was mean to my dog, he was a bastard, but we never got, oh, that's what he was doing.
Right.
That's stunning.
Now, we don't know if the cops have that and have kept it close to the vest so far. It's possible. So you're exactly right.
But there's leaks.
So, all the stories were his weird behavior. His weird and strange behavior continued up almost to his arrest. I was told by neighbors that one neighbor caught him climbing the fence to another neighbor's house and Joe knew those people, and knew that the house was empty, that they were in the hospital. And this neighbor caught him and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he said, sheepishly climbed back over the fence. This is a 70-year-old man at this point. He said he still could get over the fence pretty well and say, "Oh, I thought they were home." Some excuse.
And I love going in the back door over the fence. So much easier than the front door.
The guy who lived directly behind D'Angelo, he's in the show, and he had countless stories about how crazy Joe is what the neighborhood called him. And so the neighbors, and they even suspected that he had spied on their mother at some point and turned off backyard lights so he wouldn't be seen through the window, and even helped himself to a ladder that was in the backyard to get to the lights, to turn them off. They were motion lights. He didn't have any proof that it was Joe, but I lived behind Joe D'Angelo. So he said, "I think that's proof enough that it's probably him who was turning off these motion lights more than once, not stealing anything, taking a ladder out of this man's shed, going to the motion light, turning the motion light off, putting the ladder back, and then he thinks looking through the backyard window into his mother's bedroom, who was, I guess, around Joe's age." So there was reports of that behavior going on in that neighborhood by him for years after the last murder and stuff. So he continued with some of those behaviors.
But you don't ever think East Area rapist, or, well, we've got a time delay, right, of 40 years, and we don't think East Area rapist.
Of course not. Who's thinking that?
And it's
even
back
at
to
the
your
time.
Point. Well, and it's back to your point too, that honestly our case did not get a lot of coverage. Up here, East Area rapist did, and then it just died down, and everybody, as Americans do, oh, whoosh, next shiny thing. So they don't really think about it. I mean, I know a lot of people are experiencing kind of this renewed trauma as he's been arrested, and they're like, "Oh my God, like, I remember being so afraid." So many people have come up to me with those stories about, "I just remember being so afraid."
Yes.
And
a couple of the victims had that fear, and then they were attacked, which is really heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking when they tell you that they were afraid. Two of the victims, off the top of my head, in Sacramento, that we interviewed, told me that they were aware of it and that they were very afraid. One more so than the other, and then they both became victims. I mean, I cannot imagine the terror, those poor women. And they were super brave to sit down and talk to us about their story. And I honestly think it helps to know what he said and what his actions were. They're so similar across the board that I think it only helps the judicial process. I mean, it's just more evidence heaped upon him. Yeah. So yeah. But I know it's not easy to tell that story, and I salute those women, and I will always be their friends. All of you guys, I will always be your friends. It's something that we all went through kind of together, and it was an amazing chance to get justice for you guys. I'm glad I was a small part of it.
You know, maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I have such affection for you, because you were there at, like, it all did kind of come together. I had done a pivot for myself, feeling like I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I'm going to be out there. I still used my old name, but still. And then you've been there with us. I mean, the series was really well done. So thank you on behalf of the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really well done. And if any of y'all haven't watched Unmasking Killer, I'm pretty sure you can get it streaming now.
You can still watch it. It's on Oxygen. Oh, I'm sorry. They're going to kill me for saying that. HLN On Demand. That's HLN Headline News On Demand.
I'll fix that.
I do several shows for Oxygen too, so they're in my head. But
Oxygen is in the jam too. They're in the true crime jam as well.
Yeah, so Headline News On Demand, Unmasking a Killer. We added 2 new episodes after the arrest to go and
that's just it.
To go into who Joseph D'Angelo was.
Yeah, you came. So you've been with us being the survivors. I think most folks by now that at least listen to my podcast know that the survivors have been like my mojo superpower juice. I never thought I'd get to meet them. I mean, just Dad and Charlene died, and I always wanted to meet a rape survivor to kind of understand more what Charlene and my dad went through. So
yes.
Survivors, I know you've been over at The Word's Out Now. We go to Chris's house or Haley's house, and it's been, I mean, we feel really comfortable with you there. What's it like seeing you have the ability to see us because I'm one of them. So what is it like when you see us come?
It makes me feel really good to see you guys together and talking and just getting comfort out of each other's company, man. That's a great feeling. Like, yes, when I was at the barbecue, I would just look around and I know, Carol Daly, an investigator for the Sacramento Sheriff's Department for years, interviewed almost all of these female victims at one point or another.
Yeah.
And her partner, Richard Shelby, they were both there. Both those detectives took this. That's another thing. I'm so glad we solved this case for those guys too, because they couldn't get past it, that they were unable to solve it. It was a huge hole in their life. They both told me that. So you're all there celebrating an arrest, and we know we have the right guy. I mean, the DNA evidence is overwhelming. So just to see you guys together was fantastic. It was very heartwarming. It made me feel really good. Like if I do nothing else in my life, I've done this. So
good. Okay. Well, I want you to feel that way because I love that, Katie. I want you to feel that way because I do think that there are when any of us are, gossiping about you, as one might do, it is all favorable. And
oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And we're on the cusp of the next show that's going to be made about this coming out. And so I really am withholding opinions on that until at least I'm able to write them. But
yeah,
as we move forward, there's so many people that have covered this story, but I just felt like your approach, your journalistic, investigative journalism approach, let's put it that way. I'm sorry, you never did answer. Where did you draw the line between entertainment and true crime and entertainment victims? Because that's really it is. It's a fine line, right?
And Joke and I have done a lot of true crime shows, so I think we have a good idea where the line is. If you notice that there's no recreations where you actually really see like the guy in the ski mask and everything, we decided that is traumatic, and to be honest, I hate the way it looks visually. So we would do small things like maybe a shot of a boot stepping through a puddle. That's not a big recreation, but I think it sets the mood and the tone. Yeah. So little changes like that. But the big part was we don't have a voiceover. We don't have a narrator. You are telling the story. When Jennifer is being interviewed, she is telling the story. When this victim is being interviewed, she is telling the story. When this officer is being interviewed, that's his story. And then we put it all together. Much harder.
I was going to say, that's like using note cards back at school when we used to have all the note cards.
Joke realized what we were getting into, because that was Joke's idea. And I was like, it took me a few days to get my head around it, but I was like, let's go for it. Because, I like anything that's different and, makes it stand out. So I was like, we could always go back and air narration and put in narration if needed. What we decided to do was, because there were a couple spots where we really needed to join the last interview and the next interview.
Yeah.
So we did the slates, just the written word. So to inform people.
Okay.
And I think that has a big impact. I just think a silent,
transition. Yeah, like
words, just have an impact. So visually, we didn't want it to look like entertainment. You're exactly right.
Because I think that is some of what does make it. Again, you've got all of us spilling our guts, right? And like you said, I cried, I laughed, I was an ass. All the things, right? At the same time, though, I'm trusting all of that to you. And so how you choose to represent it and the sound bites you choose.
Right. It's a lot of trust to the documentary filmmaker. And I think we always felt it. I know I did, and I'm pretty sure Joe and Diageo felt it. Yeah, we always felt that pressure. Maybe not pressure is the right word. Responsibility.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We felt that to all you guys. Oh my God. I could probably never sleep a wink ever again if I felt like I hurt anybody out of you guys. You've been hurt enough. I would not want to add to that. I would just want to tell your story, and hopefully that we could maybe stir somebody's memory and get a tip that we needed. That's what the hope was at the time. And so, we took it very seriously, the responsibility we had to present your stories in full and in the light that they should be. And speaking of the officers, the detectives, that's another thing. I really wanted to go into the lack of technology and just the roadblocks that they had back then. I mean, they didn't even have a goddamn radio in their police car. They'd have to hold dimes in their pockets so they could use a payphone.
Oh, good God. Like,
not a joke. You know, and all the techniques that they tried, you know, they tried to pull fingerprints off a victim by using this glue that they would heat up and turn into a fume, and it would stick to human oils, and didn't work. But I applaud them, man. They tried everything. The Sacramento Sheriff's Department tried everything. They knew they had a bad look that they were catching this guy, and that he was throwing it in their face, you know, with the poem that he sent and the phone calls. So they tried everything, and I wanted to show that. I wanted to show these guys worked hard, and even long into retirement, they never forgot this case. And the victims never forgot Carol Daly.
no.
You know.
She's still, I still want to talk to her. She's like, I'll give you an interview after the trial. I go, I know. Everybody has to be.
Yeah, they can't talk.
They can't talk right now.
No.
But so when all is said and done, did y'all win any awards?
We didn't win an award, but we got a lot of praise. I know. I don't know how it works. That had to be we broke all the records for HLN. It was it had the most views on demand that HLN ever had.
Nice. Congratulations.
We have been praised by different critics. I really have not seen a bad review. I've been sent several, several good reviews. And then lately during the quarantine, somebody said top 10 documentaries that are not on Netflix, and we were number 1. That was kind of cool.
Congratulations. That's very cool. And the thing is, it's not on Netflix.
I appreciate it. And that's a person who knows documentary.
HLN doesn't want to,
No.
they can't.
It may be at some point.
Okay. It was like, they can't set.
No. CNN does put their documentaries on Netflix. So at some point it may go on there.
'Tis the season,
Yeah,
HLN. Let's get going, man. It's we have time to burn before D'Angelo's back in court. Now it's been scheduled for August. So we've got a ways to go.
Yeah.
Get on this.
Yes.
Let's get that puppy.
And I read an article today that they were talking about the delays in the case due to the coronavirus epidemic. So
yes.
Yeah, so it's delayed, and you and I have heard the rumors about possible plea deal. Yes. I was curious how you felt about that, to plead guilty to all the crimes. I'm assuming it's to plead guilty to all the crimes.
It's that, well, the defense is floating the willingness to plead, and what the prosecution is not interested at this time. Of course, that's up to the elected officials who are the district attorneys in every jurisdiction. So that's going to need 6 people to agree, which is a big deal. And also, I think the survivors at least are pretty committed to at least let's do this preliminary hearing in August. And then if there's a plea deal after a negotiation, whatever, we got to get this guy to survive the coronavirus. That's the first hurdle, and then get back in court. But we really want to have some time in court. I don't think any of us feel the need for a giant trial.
Right.
But the preliminary hearing where he's held accountable and has to at least show up in court, we're so bound over to that right now. He's not once had to sit in the courtroom and hear, other than the day they read the counts for the death penalty, like they read the 26 counts. That's been the only day he's really had to hear it.
Right. Agreed.
That's it.
He really it would be nice to get. I don't know what effect it'll have on him. Probably not much, but you hope that there's an effect on him, that somehow that some of it sinks in. You know. Yeah. I just always remember what the one thing he said to police. Do you remember? It came out that because he wouldn't say anything. They would ask him if he wanted to drink, he wouldn't answer.
Right. Oh no, he doesn't say.
And I don't know if he was scared that they were going to get his DNA. He just wanted to go. They got your DNA already. That's why they're here. So you drinking a Dr. Pepper is not going to. But the one thing he did say was he mumbled to himself that while nobody was in the room, but it was caught on camera. I was being good, or I tried to be good. I was being good, something to that effect. So, and I know exactly what he means. Again, it goes back to what you were saying. he puts these different sections of his personality away until he feels like pulling them out. They're not. He's not schizophrenic or anything like that, I don't believe. I believe that that's just his coping mechanism to deal with these horrific desires that he has. And so he's talking to himself, basically talking to that other part of him, saying, we were good. I tried to be good. How dare they arrest me now? That's my thought of what he was thinking. Yeah, it's complete narcissism.
Yeah, and it's so young. That is such a young reaction. I mean, that idea of, I was like, your current situation, I was being good.
Right.
Your current situation, I was behaving.
It's childlike.
Wow. Yeah, it's really an immature level of reasoning, which, yeah, you and I could do a whole nother show about talking about Aaron and all that. Like, I'm sorry, people live with this man. People live with this man. Todd, I want to thank you so much for making time to come on my podcast. This is
I had a lot of fun, and I would do it again anytime. It was a lot of fun. And once I got the angle worked out and the lighting in the background.
Yeah, guys, there's nothing funnier than working with the TV guy, and then he's like worrying about lighting and camera and everything. These Zoom, naive.
I'm pretty much on the research end, but yes, I cannot let down Joke and Biagio, who are visual experts.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, they really are. And you mentioned, I'll say real quick, you mentioned a lot of the graphics for all the data that's in the show that you thought helped a lot. That was a lot of discussion, and we knew that going in. You have a lot of data; it's got to be easy to read. It can't be, something where you have to sit there and study it, because with TV, we got to move on. So something that's easily understood visually, but really brings home the data. And so we worked a lot of that. Biagio, who is Joke's husband and our editor extraordinaire, does a lot of things. He came up with that visual, and I thought it was fantastic.
Secret marketer, man. Secret marketer, because that's stuff I struggle with all the time. Simplify, simplify, simplify.
Yeah.
So, yeah, much love for that. That was
well, if you have a complicated story, it helps to maybe simplify it where you can. There'll be areas obviously you can't, but yeah. And the other thing was that we got to interview people that I had never heard from. I'd only seen their names in the investigation. The guy who saw the Golden State Killer leave the house after shooting the young couple in Rancho Cordova. I had only seen his name, and so I got to interview him and talk to him at length, and that was pretty interesting. Man, talk about, I mean, he was like a 17, 18-year-old kid when it happened, and this story, he's still talking about this, and he said, it's been so long, it's hard to remember some of the details, but at least he could still have the old police report, and he could look at it and remember, oh yeah, that I remember that, but it's been so long. But people like that, people who were just played a role in the case, and I was really eager to speak to, and we managed to do that, and we managed to include the Visalia ransacker cases, and the Visalia Police Department couldn't have been kinder and a bigger help. All the men and women, they were super helpful, and they, from day one, basically believed that the Visalia ransacker went to Sacramento and became the East Area rapist, and were proven right. They were correct, and the best drawing we had of him was from a Visalia Police Department officer, turns out. The only accurate description, really, of him. Yeah, the officer who was shot at by the Visalia ransacker.
It's good to know that vision of that gun shooting at you can also, that's some skills if he was able to remember a face when you're not thinking.
The description was almost dead on for D'Angelo. And this is why D'Angelo knew he had to get out of the area, and that's why he transferred to Auburn. But this is all in the documentary, so if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you can watch it.
No, definitely, yeah. And now you've got 2 shows that are in the can. I don't even know if I've seen them yet, so I need to go look. 2 post-arrest, which are really important. I know you were filming it. I just don't know if I actually sat down long enough to watch them.
But I think they've been out for like over a year now. Yeah, we did them very quickly. So it was all the info on D'Angelo that we had at the time. Interviewed a few other people, neighbors, his ex-partner in Exeter, because he was actually an Exeter cop, but he would pull his crimes in nearby Visalia, which was very smart. Because if he's seen in Visalia and he's part of the Visalia PD, which is small, he could have been recognized.
Busted, right.
Fairly quickly. So we interviewed his ex partner and then the chief of police at the time at Auburn. And, a lot of people were saying, oh, these people should have known. There's no way these people would have known. There's no way. Even today, they say, there was nothing. He was a weirdo, kind of strange. Rapist, murderer? No.
Well,
never got that.
Just watching his demeanor today, and we know he won't talk. He just does not share. That's one thing about him. He just doesn't share anything.
And that was the common thread through the interviews. Wouldn't laugh at jokes, wouldn't tell jokes, seemed not to understand jokes, which we know is can be, a sign.
Logical.
Yes. Talked about his future and kind of acted like he was too good for Exeter. And even his partner said, what are you doing in Exeter? He had a college degree and everything. And, we know why he was in Exeter. It's a small town. He could be a big fish. We know why. Everything feeds his narcissism. Everything goes back to that when you're that kind of personality. The crimes, the job, your wife, how you deal with your family, how you deal with other people, how you deal with your neighbors, all feeds into his narcissism,
And did you try to
psychotic
get
tendencies
to talk? Did you?
I'm sorry?
Did you approach any of the kids?
No, we stayed away from the kids, and this kind of goes back to your point. They just had their father arrested for the worst crime in California history, and I knew all the Nealics would be, just haranguing them with requests. So we decided not to. Didn't ask the kids, didn't ask the wife.
Good
we
choice.
were okay. The neighbors knew everything.
Yeah, I think it's a good decision. I mean, I say somebody's like, well, you want to interview the kids? And I'm like, well, they know where I am. When they're ready, I would love to talk with one of the daughters. But
right, because they have an insight that none of us will ever have, not even their closest neighbor, what it's like to grow up in that house.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating to know. But the neighbors, you should watch the 2 episodes. I think you'll find them very interesting. The neighbors have some really interesting things to say, some fascinating stories, and you're like, oh, I mean, it all fits.
Of course, yes.
And we kind of knew once we had the suspect that this would all fall in like pieces of a puzzle, and it has. I mean, there's still stuff we want to know, but
it's all, I know, it's all come together.
He's in all the areas when he needs to be.
Todd, thank you so much for doing this today.
No problem.
I really appreciate you taking the time. And everybody, go to HLN, watch it streaming, and make sure you see all the episodes. 8 episodes now, right? If we've got 6.
7. Okay, 5 original, and then 2 after the arrest.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you for having me.
I'll talk to you soon, no doubt.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Ventura Highway in the